How's it going, Rose Gallery? I'm Kel, and today we are going to do an Arkham Horror the Card Game review talking about the blob that ate everything. So this is going to be a pretty quick video giving you my thoughts and experiences with this standalone scenario pack. The first part of this review will be a spoilerless review. I'm not really going to go over any of the story, just kind of give you my rough general thoughts, and then the second part of the video will be going over minor spoilers. I'm not going to go into the whole story and really deep into the mechanics, but I will talk about the mechanics and I will talk about the story a little bit. So like I said, the Blob That Ate Everything is a standalone scenario pack. You don't have to have any other Arkham products except for an investigator deck to play. So if you have a friend who can loan you a deck, or you just randomly happen to have one, or you buy one of the standalone investigator decks that are releasing later this year in 2020, then you can just play this, without having to have anything else. Which also means you do not need the core set. You don't have to mix in any cards from the core set into this scenario like you have to do in some of the other expansions. So this has actually existed for a little while. It first came out in 2019 at, I think it says on the back here, at Arkham Nights 2019 and Gen Con 2019. But this is the first time you've been able to actually purchase it without, being severely gouged on eBay from directly, from Fantasy Flight Games or from your local game store. I think it's 20, 30 bucks. Let's see what the MSRP is on here. Maybe I'll put it there's somewhere on the screen. There'll be some words that tell you how much this is MSRP. It's not super expensive, though I will note that as a standalone expansion or standalone scenario, there aren't any investigator cards in here. It's just the scenario. You don't buy this and get any investigator cards. Well, there's some, but we'll talk about those in the second part. So just straight up, did I like this? Yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun. Both my girlfriend and I played this halfway through our Circle Undone campaign. We're maybe 4 or 5 scenarios in. I think our decks are maybe 10 point, 12 point decks or something like that. And we had a ton of fun with this. I will also say it's pretty long. It took us maybe 2 or 3 hours to complete the whole scenario. But, it was our first time. We were, running through all the rules and learning all the mechanics. There are some pretty weird mechanics in here. They're really fun mechanics, but it took us a good chunk of time to actually complete this. So you definitely need to set aside a good amount of time to actually finish this. I would say the length of a long movie, a Lord of the Rings movie or something like that. That's about how long it takes to complete this. I should also mention that there are 2 modes to this. There is the standalone mode or small group mode where you can play by yourself or you can play with a small group. And there's also the epic mode that was actually used at the conventions. So it's it's a huge mode where you can play with multiple groups of investigators, kind of convention style. Obviously, I have not had that experience, with all conventions basically being canceled in 2020. So can't really say to that, but I can say that the regular experience is excellent. I will also state that it is fairly challenging. It's not super hard, and like I said, our decks are maybe 10 or 12 points, but it did definitely have some challenge there. It wasn't a face roll where you just kind of crush everything, but it also wasn't super hard where we felt like it was unwinnable. It wasn't super close either. I mean, we definitely won, but we could have won more, if that matters, or if that makes any sense. We could have done more things and gotten more experience and gotten more extra cool things that I'll talk about once again in the second part of the video. So yeah, that's basically my rough opinions of it. I think it is 20 bucks. If you like Arkham Horror the Card Game, you already have an investigator deck, you want to experience something new, I definitely think this is worth picking up. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot more fun than I was expecting, to be completely honest. And it also has that really cool, 1920s Arkham horror vibe with some little, sci-fi elements. It's the Blob That Ate Everything. You got some little sci-fi elements there. I think it's actually really, really cool. It's a really cool and fun theme, and I highly recommend it for any fan of Arkham Horror. So now let's get on to the second part of the video where I talk about a little bit more in depth of what I think. All right, second part of the video, we're gonna get into some minor spoilers. Let's talk about some of the mechanics. So there is a repeating act deck, which means you'll go through the act deck multiple times, and I think it's actually really fun because you get a good sense of what you're doing the first time through, and then after every time that you go through it, you kind of have a better idea of what's going on. And every single time you do go through it, a new kind of almost random encounter happens. Like I said, I'm not going to go over specifics, but I think there are 4 different options. It actually really reminds me of the Excelsior Hotel in that every time you play this, unless you do all 4 of them in one go, which would be actually be kind of crazy, you can have different experiences. So I think that's really cool. There is some replayability here. Like, for example, Robin and I only experienced 2 of the 4 encounters to actually like beat this. We only actually went through the encounter deck, or the not the encounter deck, the act deck twice. And then completing those really cool encounters maybe gets you some extra stuff to take on your campaign in, you know, Dunwich Horror or Dunwich Legacy or Carcosa or whatever. Once again, I'm not going to tell you too much, but you definitely want to complete those extra things. And they are extra. You don't have to do them. You know, there is like a main specific like agenda that you need to do. You need to beat the blob, but there's also like some little extra things that pop up. Like, here's some very general examples that don't really spoil anything. Maybe help the military, or help a scientist, or fend off some other unworldly creatures, that kind of stuff. I also want to note that the encounter deck is really fun. There are some like general monsters in there, but the blob actually is always there. It's just always there, and it kind of has this looming presence, which I think is actually really cool. It is very, very thematic, and the encounter deck really helps with that. The blob can devour things, and by things I mean like things, like everything. It can devour your cards. It can devour like the light. Like, you will turn off the light in the room, like crazy stuff like that. And with that said, I do want to say there is one really, really cool mechanic with the Blob That Ate Everything, and that is the random table mechanic. So there is a card in the encounter deck where if you get it, you need to pull 2 chaos tokens from the chaos bag, and then you get a random effect. So basically you consult a big table, like a big chart, like a random effect chart, kind of like a wild magic chart if you ever play Dungeons and Dragons. But yeah, that's kind of what it reminds me of. So you consult the chart and you see what happens. So if you're like, oh, I got like a skull and then the star, like you go check the chart and see what happens. And it's all crazy stuff. It's not all like bad stuff, which is actually really cool. It's also really fun. But there definitely are some really bad things. But there's also some good things too, which I really appreciate in Arkham, because most of the time in Arkham, it's pretty dreary and it's all like all bad stuff. And it's not all bad stuff in the Blob That Ate Everything. Maybe he eats something that's not yours. Maybe he'll eat an enemy or something. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So all in all, I highly recommend the Blob That Ate Everything. This is a really, really fun scenario pack. I would say if you really like Murder at the Excelsior Hotel, it's not close, but it's kind of close. I had almost the same experience. I thought both of them were really, really good. And I think, you know, this stands up right next to Murder at the Excelsior Hotel. If you are new to Arkham Horror, the card game, I did do a video on like how to get into Arkham Horror in 2020. Definitely check that out for more tips on how to just get into Arkham Horror in general. Like I said, this is a standalone scenario. This doesn't really help you get into the game. This is already if you are into the game and you're just looking for something extra to play. And I definitely recommend this as something extra to play. Like I said, we played it as part of our campaign, but you can play it just outside of your campaign. Just build up some decks, maybe use those new decks that are coming out at the end of the year, and just, you know, play with some friends. Maybe, you know, this is your board game night. Anyway, that is the video. I hope you enjoyed this little mini review of the Blob That Ate Everything. Please let me know if you'd like to see stuff like this in the future, because it's something I think I definitely want to do, maybe with the new Innsmouth expansion after we play through the first couple scenarios of that, or maybe with some other stuff like the Circle Undone right here. This is the expansion that we are currently playing through. We did finish the Dunwich Legacy, which I thought was pretty interesting, and I might have a full video on that in the future. But regardless, thank y'all so much for watching. Maybe like, comment, subscribe, check out my Patreon, all of that good stuff, and I will see you next time for some more gaming content. We'll see you later.